The story of Sergio and Tatiana Pino is one of wealth, power, betrayal, and danger. It culminated in a tragic and dramatic series of events that exposed a sinister plot within a high-profile family. Sergio Pino, a powerful Miami developer, was accused of orchestrating an elaborate 5-year scheme to murder his wife, Tatiana. The plot involved attempts to poison her with fentanyl, multiple arson attacks, and ultimately, a failed murder-for-hire attempt that came dangerously close to success. So, what really happened, and how did we get here? Well, today we're going to try to answer that question. So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I post a video on one of these topics 3 times a week, so if you like this sort of thing, please consider subscribing to the channel. I would absolutely love to have you here. Now, this is a wild story straight out of a Hollywood movie, so when I tell you to buckle up, buckle up. So we're going to jump right into this. Tatiana Pino and Sergio Pino met when she was just a senior at South Miami Senior High School. At the time, she worked at her parents' neighborhood grocery store, running the cash register. And Sergio, who is 12 years her senior and was also a rising star in Miami's real estate development scene, frequented the store because it was located very close to his office. He had recently separated from his first wife and was building his career in the plumbing supply business that he had started with his father after immigrating from Cuba. Tatiana's parents, both Cuban immigrants themselves, were initially hesitant about the relationship due to the serious age difference and Sergio's ongoing divorce, as well as the fact that he already had 2 children. However, despite these concerns, Tatiana and Sergio's relationship blossomed, and they began dating. Their courtship included lavish trips on Sergio's yacht and vacations to Vail. They got married in 1992 after 5 years of dating in a very large religious ceremony attended by hundreds, yes, hundreds, plural, of guests. Their early relationship was filled with luxury, a testament to Sergio's success as a businessman. But it eventually unraveled due to betrayal and growing suspicions of Sergio's dark intentions. But before we dive into this murder-for-hire plot of his own wife, we need to unpack his already shady history. Sergio Pino was born in Cuba and arrived in the United States as part of the Cuban diaspora. His American dream unfolded in Miami, where he started as a developer in the 1980s, and he quickly made a name for himself. He founded the Century Home Builders Group, and this group became one of Miami's most prolific home builders. By the 1990s, Pino had transformed the South Florida real estate landscape, focusing on suburban developments that capitalized on Miami's rapid population growth. His influence expanded beyond real estate and into political circles, where he forged key alliances with politicians and local power players. Pino's success, however, wasn't purely driven by business acumen. He leveraged his connections to shape local development policies and cemented his position as a real estate titan. So suffice it to say, there are a lot of corruption allegations against this man. As Sergio Pino's influence grew, so did the scrutiny around his business practices. By the early 2000s, Pino was linked to multiple allegations of bribery, corruption, and pay-to-play schemes. Investigative reports suggest that Pino had used his political ties to secure favorable zoning changes and contracts. One of the most prominent accusations came when it was alleged that Pino had bribed public officials to approve of his developments. Now, although no criminal charges were initially filed, this cloud of corruption would follow him for years. Critics of Pino argued that his developments contributed to urban sprawl and environmental degradation, with some saying that the deals were made at the expense of Miami's natural landscape. Sergio's career was marked by numerous allegations of corruption, bribery, largely centered on his influence over Miami's real estate and political scene. So here are some of those specific details regarding accusations. So the first is zoning changes and development approvals. He was accused of using those political connections he had made to influence zoning decisions. One significant allegation involved bribing local officials to expedite the approval of those developments. The favorability of these zoning changes, particularly in the suburban areas, allowed Pino's projects to rapidly expand, enhancing his business while raising concerns about that political corruption. Sergio Pino has been closely associated with several prominent political figures in Florida, particularly in Miami-Dade County. His connections include ties to influential local politicians, such as former Miami-Dade County commissioners and state legislators. For example, Pino has been linked to influential political figures like former Mayor Carlos Jimenez, who benefited from Pino's campaign contributions. He was also reportedly connected with state-level politicians, including former Governor Jeb Bush. And these relationships often allowed him to influence zoning and development decisions that favored his real estate ventures. Now, this is what leads into the pay-to-play allegations. Investigations suggest that Pino's relationship with local politicians were not purely purpose-driven, but involved a pay-to-play dynamic. His substantial campaign donations were believed to have influenced politicians to favor his real estate projects. In particular, these donations were linked to securing contracts and favorable decisions from the local government. And this raised red flags about the ethical boundaries between his business interests and political connections. One of these prominent political connections was his relationship with Miami-Dade County Commissioner Jose Pepe Diaz, who was a key player in land use and zoning decisions. Pino's financial support for Diaz and other local officials enabled him to push for zoning changes that benefited a lot of his development projects at the risk of hurting the environment. His political contributions were also aimed at influencing the Urban Development Boundary, or UDB, a key restriction that limited suburban sprawl into environmentally sensitive areas. He sought to move the boundary to accommodate his suburban projects, especially through his company, Century Home Builders Group. Pino's efforts to expand into agricultural and protected lands were controversial, sparking criticism from environmentalists and urban planners. And his ability to sway politicians extended beyond Diaz. He also supported mayoral candidates and other city officials who had a say in zoning and development properties. His support for then Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas, for example, coincided with favorable rulings that helped accelerate all of his projects. So through these connections and contributions, Pino was able to secure zoning changes that paved the way for these massive suburban developments, which in turn led to allegations of contributing to that urban sprawl, traffic congestion, and the degradation of Miami's natural environment. The controversies surrounding Pino's influence on zoning policies and development approvals were frequently linked to accusations of backroom deals and pay-to-play schemes, even though no formal charges were ever filed in many of these cases. One notable zoning battle occurred in the mid-2000s when Pino attempted to push for the expansion of the UDB to develop several thousand homes on agricultural land. This effort, backed by those political allies, met strong resistance from environmental groups and local activists who believed that Pino's developments would contribute to environmental degradation and strain Miami's infrastructure. The controversy just constantly highlighted concerns about how those political contributions affected public policy. Now, when it comes to the threat to the environment, one of the main issues raised by activists was that Pino's projects threatened the Everglades, which, if you don't know, is a unique and fragile ecosystem that's critical to the region's water supply and biodiversity. Activists claimed that Pino's developments and others like them disrupted water flow and increased pollution in the area. And these changes exacerbated Miami's already vulnerable water management issues, leading to more frequent flooding and the contamination of water sources. Activists also believed that Pino's developments fueled urban sprawl, worsening that congestion and placing additional strain on public infrastructure like schools, hospitals, and sewage systems. Many argued that the unchecked expansion of Miami's suburbs undermined smart urban planning efforts and made the region more vulnerable to climate-related risks, such as rising sea levels and hurricanes. So, despite the fact that no criminal charges were ever formally brought against Pino, investigative reports, including those by local media, repeatedly tied his name to shady dealings. His ties to powerful figures allowed him to navigate legal scrutiny, but the ongoing suspicions cast a shadow over his success, and we all know there's no outrunning bad public opinion. One of the most high-profile accusations against Pino involved the development near Miami Airport. He was accused of improperly influencing local officials to approve the project, despite the community opposition due to environmental concerns and the proximity to a key water management area. This case attracted widespread attention, as it exemplified how his political influence allowed him to bypass regulatory concerns. The airport development scandal involved a controversial land deal where Sergio Pino's Century Partners sought to develop property near the Kendall-Miami Executive Airport, and it pushed for changes to Miami-Dade's county urban development boundary. Pino's development plans clashed with environmentalists and local activists who argued that the expanding urban projects near the airport threatened surrounding wetlands, wildlife, and Miami's delicate ecosystem, particularly those Everglades. The scandal also raised concerns about Pino's political connections and influence over all of these zoning decisions. So it sparked a lot of public allegations of corruption. Overall, while Sergio Pino managed to build a real estate empire, his reputation was frequently marred by these allegations of unethical practices. His ability to leverage those political connections was seen as both a key to his success and the very reason for the controversies surrounding his career. But what about his personal life? How did things escalate to such an extreme where he tried to off his own wife? And it seems like he really thought he'd be able to get away with it. So we are going to jump to 2017. This is when Tatiana Pino makes a shocking discovery. Her husband was having an affair with Nancy Pastor, a marketing director at Century Home Builders, his very own company. But despite this, Tatiana was determined to salvage their 30-year marriage, and she pursued counseling in an effort to repair the relationship. However, this betrayal would mark the beginning of the end for the couple, as their marriage began to unravel both publicly and privately. Behind closed doors, the situation was far more dire than Tatiana initially realized. In 2019, Tatiana's health took a mysterious turn for the worst. She experienced severe and unexplained symptoms like fainting spells, nausea, and uncontrollable shaking. Her condition worsened to the point where doctors were forced to implant a pacemaker to regulate her heart. Yet they were still unable to pinpoint the underlying cause of her deteriorating health. For 3 years, Tatiana's medical team was perplexed by her symptoms. And it wasn't until a visit to Johns Hopkins Hospital in 2022 that the true cause of her illness came to light. Blood tests revealed that she had alarming levels of fentanyl in her system. And if you don't know, I'm sure we all know, but fentanyl is a powerful opioid, and Tatiana had never knowingly taken it. So this discovery raised some serious concerns, and it led Tatiana to a harrowing conclusion. Her husband, Sergio, was likely poisoning her. And Tatiana's suspicions were not unfounded, because as the investigation deepened, it became clear that Sergio had been orchestrating a very elaborate plan to eliminate her. The fentanyl poisoning was just part one of a broader, more sinister plot that would ultimately include a murder-for-hire scheme. This period of Tatiana's life is characterized by physical suffering, psychological distress, and growing fears for her safety as she realized her husband's true intentions. The discovery of fentanyl in her system led Tatiana to believe that Sergio had been secretly poisoning her while they were in counseling trying to work on their marriage. So she files for divorce, thank goodness. And as the divorce proceedings began, Sergio's behavior became increasingly dangerous because instead of accepting the separation, he initiated a plot to kill Tatiana. Federal agents uncovered that Sergio had hired multiple individuals to monitor and intimidate Tatiana, as well as to execute acts of violence targeting her and her family. One of the most alarming acts of intimidation occurred in August of 2023, when Tatiana's sister's Chevrolet Silverado was set on fire outside of her home in the middle of the night. This arson mirrored a previous incident from July 2022 when two other family cars were similarly torched. Investigators later connected those incidents to individuals working under Sergio's direction, linking his growing desperation and obsession with controlling Tatiana's life to these very calculated attacks. Sergio's plot reached a deadly crescendo on June 23, 2024, when he allegedly orchestrated an ambush on Tatiana. After attending a Sunday morning church service at Calvary Chapel, Miami, Tatiana was unknowingly followed home by Vernon Green, one of the hitmen hired by Sergio. Green, armed with a gun, waited for her outside her Pinecrest home, and as Tatiana arrived, Green ambushed her. But her quick thinking and sheer luck saved her life. She laid on the horn and floored the gas pedal, driving into her own backyard to escape the attack. While Tatiana managed to avoid being harmed, the situation escalated further as Green confronted her adult daughter at gunpoint, ordering her inside the house before fleeing the scene. This incident, combined with evidence from surveillance cameras and tracking data, solidified the FBI's case against Sergio Pino. Investigators later discovered that he had orchestrated not only the poisoning, but also the recruitment of multiple hitmen to carry out an assassination attempt on Tatiana. This intricate web of arsons, surveillance, and staged attacks revealed the depth of Sergio's plot and his willingness to go to any length to harm his wife, even as he staged himself as a victim of similar violence in an effort to deflect suspicion. And this is all because Tatiana wouldn't sign a settlement deal in regard to their divorce. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and he offered her $50 million. And she said, no, I'm entitled to more of this estate. We've been married for 30 years. And apparently this incensed him so much that he thought, how do I get out of this? I guess I better kill my ex-wife. What? So as the federal agents dug into the murder-for-hire plot against Tatiana Pino, they uncovered an intricate network of deception all orchestrated by Sergio Pino. Through a combination of cell phone records, license plate trackers, and surveillance footage, agents were able to trace every step of Sergio's plan. These investigations revealed how deeply involved Sergio was in the plot, which spanned several years and multiple attacks on Tatiana, her family, and their property. The investigation was pieced together using various forms of surveillance. Cell phone data became a crucial piece of evidence, linking Sergio and his hired associates to key locations at the time of the attacks. For instance, calls made between Sergio and his henchmen before and after violent incidents, such as the arson at Tatiana's sister's house and the hit and run, painted a clear picture of coordination. License plate trackers also placed the vehicles of Sergio's hired men near Tatiana's home and the places she frequented, further tying him to the crimes. And witness testimonies also corroborated much of this evidence, strengthening the case. It's like, wow, this multi-millionaire really did not go about this in a very smart way. Not that I would have wanted him to, because he was unsuccessful in his plot to kill, luckily, but wow. Wow. So let's break this down even further. So in those phone calls between Sergio and his associates, they were able to track exactly where some of these crimes occurred. For example, in the days leading up to the June 23rd ambush on Tatiana, Sergio and Fausto Villar, one of the key conspirators, were in contact 9 times. And there seemed to be a pattern with these calls. There's a lot of coordination that was discovered before and after the arson incidents at Tatiana's sister's house in 2022 and 2023. Calls between Villar and other defendants like Bayron Bennett and Michael Dolfo further connected more individuals to the physical crime scenes. Do people forget that, you have a GPS on your phone? Our phones are tracking us literally everywhere we go, whether we like it or not. It's just shocking. So this phone data also placed another suspect, Edner Etienne, near Tatiana's home during that hit and run in August of 2023. Call logs showed interactions between Etienne and Villar right before and after the incident. The use of license plate trackers was also an interesting tactic that investigators used. So they used license plate readers to track vehicles in all of these attacks. And the surveillance data tied to the suspects' cars, including Vernon Green's Dodge Ram, they can track it to the vicinity of Tatiana's home. License plate readers also picked up the same vehicle near her church the morning of the June 23rd ambush. And of course, if you're gonna commit a crime, maybe don't do it in a public place, because video footage was captured at locations where Tatiana was being followed. So one example was footage from Baker's Key Resort in Key Largo on June 22nd, 2024, showing the Dodge Ram that would later be used in the ambush parked in the same lot while Tatiana was dining with friends. And of course, witnesses. Friends of Tatiana testified about her suspicions of being followed and about their concerns about Sergio's behavior, especially after the violent incidences like car arsons and the hit and run. Even Tatiana's sister, Aurora Linares, who witnessed many of these incidents, corroborated much of the timeline, adding that she had long suspected Sergio's involvement in her sister's mysterious illness and all of the attacks on her family. Now, after being arrested, one of the conspirators, Avery Bivens, reportedly cooperated with the FBI and confirmed details about Sergio's plan. This testimony helped solidify the case against Sergio and his accomplices. So the combination of those phone records, surveillance footage, and license plate data allowed law enforcement to connect the suspects to the attacks and uncover the depths of Sergio Pino's orchestration of this elaborate murder-for-hire plot. And what's crazy to me, too, is he kept trying and failing, trying and failing, trying and failing. Do you not... I'm so confused how someone can be obviously so smart and also manipulative enough to figure out these political ties to get him what he wants. And then he seemingly very arbitrarily and sloppily starts trying to kill his wife and has multiple hitmen. It's you really think that they're not going to talk? It blows my mind. It blows my mind. So now we've come to the raids in the summer of 2024. After months of building their case, federal agents carried out a series of raids targeting Sergio and the men involved in his plot. One raid took place at Sergio's waterfront home in Coral Gables, where agents searched for further evidence of his involvement. They also arrested several of the hitmen Sergio had allegedly hired, including Vernon Green, who had ambushed Tatiana in her driveway. Just as federal authorities were closing in on Sergio, the case took a tragic turn. On July 16, 2024, before agents could formally arrest him for his involvement in the murder-for-hire plot, Sergio took his own life at the couple's former waterfront home in Coral Gables. His unaliving shocked those close to him and brought the criminal investigation to a sudden, unsettling end. And while Sergio's death marked the conclusion of one chapter of the investigation, it left many questions unanswered, particularly about the full scope of his plot and how long he had been planning to harm his wife. Despite Sergio's unaliving, the arrests of his associates and the wealth of evidence gathered during the investigation provided a grim picture of the lengths he went to. His actions left behind a legacy of betrayal, violence, and manipulation, and the story continues to unfold as those involved in his plot face prosecution. Sergio's death and the shocking murder-for-hire allegations sent tremors through Miami's high society. A prominent figure in the city's real estate and political circles, Pino's downfall was unexpected for many who had viewed him as a pillar of the community. His close connections with influential political figures such as Senator Marco Rubio and Florida Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Núñez added to the weight of the scandal. Both Rubio and Núñez were close to the Pino family. Rubio's wife, Jeanette, was particularly close to Tatiana, further amplifying the shock. The allegations that surfaced, including Sergio's involvement in poisoning his wife and orchestrating an elaborate murder plot, were difficult for many in Miami's elite to reconcile with the man they thought they knew. Pino had built a reputation as a somewhat respected businessman and generous political donor, which made these revelations all the more unsettling. His financial support and relationships with political leaders over the years had cemented his image as a successful, upstanding member of the community. But now those same leaders were left grappling with the fact that they'd been close to someone capable of incredibly dark actions. For Tatiana, I can't even imagine realizing that your husband of 30 years is trying to poison you. This has been deeply traumatic for her. The FBI's investigation and Sergio's eventual unaliving might have saved her life, but those emotional scars will still remain. The ordeal, which included years of suspected poisoning and physical threats, I can't imagine living in fear for that long. And it's left Tatiana with lingering trauma. And even though the immediate danger has passed, the psychological impact of being the target of such a scheme has got to be and feel so profound. The legacy of this case extends beyond Tatiana's personal experience. It's raised questions about the dangers of unchecked power and influence, especially when someone with a public image as polished as Sergio Pino's can hide really sinister intentions behind closed doors. And as the investigation is now closed, the public is left reflecting on how someone so successful could have spiraled into a violent plot to eliminate his wife. Didn't he have enough? He had everything at his fingertips. And because he didn't want to do what everyone who gets divorced has to do, divide assets, because he committed adultery, he just decides to kill her. And I just can't help but feel so badly for Tatiana, because not only did she have to deal with the reality that her wealthy, powerful husband had cheated on her, but then when she sticks up for herself and wants a divorce because he betrayed her trust, he decides he's going to poison her. And when that doesn't work, he decides, I'm going to hire 9 other people to kill her. This story of betrayal, deception, and tragedy will likely remain a point of reflection for those involved in Miami's social and political elite for years to come, but also all of us. It serves as a stark reminder that even those who seem to have it all can harbor dark secrets and sinister desires. So, what do you think about all of this? I feel like a theme over the last few months that I've kind of been realizing is money really brings out the worst in people. And I know on a surface level, we all know that. But when I really sit and think about how many of these crimes that we cover are driven by people not who just are desperate for money, but who have exorbitant, massive amounts of wealth, and somehow it's still not enough. We've covered the Diddy case on this channel, and I'll be providing an update for you all very soon. What else do these powerful people need? These powerful, wealthy, respected, feared people who have access to everything, seemingly can get away with everything. Why do they have to keep going to these extremes of murdering their wives or hiring people to kill their adversaries or harming children in this way? Is it worth it? Is it worth getting so wealthy that your humanity just slowly disappears? In my opinion, I don't think so. So anyways, my thoughts and prayers go out to Tatiana and her family. I'm so grateful this wasn't worse. I'm so grateful that they're still alive. And we might hear more about this case. There might be more details that come to light as things progress. And I know it's frustrating that we don't see true justice in a situation like this, but all we can hope is that the survivors are able to move forward and live the happy life, the peaceful life that they deserve. So don't forget to let me know what you think about this case down in the comments down below, and let me know if there's a case that you would like to hear me cover. Anyways, guys, stay safe out there, stay skeptical, and always ask questions. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Appreciate you. Bye.